Hi, it's Tootie Tagerly, about 12:30 midday on the West Coast on a Tuesday from San Francisco. And today we're going to talk about how to use structure and spontaneity as leadership tools. I talk a lot about these two opposing forces. Sometimes in my book, I called them as force and flow. But I think the word structure probably is a little bit better than force. And what these two things are speaking about is to the part of ourselves which needs structure, needs a plan, needs an understanding, needs a roadmap, needs clear structures, if you will, to make sure that our life and our leadership keeps going the way we want it to. This is about goal setting, about OKRs, about having rhythms and rituals to keep us in place. So that's one side of it, structure. The other side of it is spontaneity. It's the energy, it's the flow, it's the freestyle, it's the free form, it's the being in that magical state where improvising, ideation, gestation, everything feels to really flow. And I think what's really interesting as leadership tools is to balance both of these forces of structure and spontaneity and to learn when to use what and to learn what your natural patterns are so you can experiment with doing different things. So, one thing I am going to share, and this is a leadership model that I use a lot, which was co developed by my colleague Jim Herman and I, which is a leadership North Star. And I'm going to use this as a way to explore around structure and spontaneity. So, with the leadership North Star, I'm going to go around with me as the center. It's how am I? What are my patterns? What works for me around structure and spontaneity? And then start moving around to how do I show up when I'm working on projects? How do I work with people and meetings? And then what does it mean to play with structure and spontaneity in the greater context of my community? So, just a little framing there. So, first of all, starting in the middle of that leadership North Star is hey, me. What works for you around structure and spontaneity? What are your typical patterns and comfortable areas around structure and spontaneity? So, for me, I'm a person who uses structure in order to give me freedom of creativity. So for me, right now, I'm in a period post COVID where I really want to get um, my body and my eating habits back into shape. So for 2 months now, I've been doing a boxing boot camp from 6 to 7 a.m. And it's terrible because who wants to get up that early to get there, and who wants to go to bed that early? But I find that that structure and ritual of doing that Monday through Friday actually frees up so much energy and creative energy that when I'm home right afterwards, it's like, boom, I can write, I can create, I can make so many things. So the other thing for me is that I use my calendar pretty dedicatedly to be able to like find, ways and spaces to put in structure for which days I'm going to do which things. Um, Personally, I'm also divorced and I have my kids 50% time. So I groom my weeks for the when I have them, when I don't have them, around when I can focus more time on work and friends and time for me as opposed to kid focused time. For a lot of people, I also find that sometimes you need structure to put in tasks that are maybe a little bit less natural, whether it's making sure that you spend time networking, whether it's time making sure that you spend time writing. I find structure to be really helpful when there's something that you really want to do, a long-term goal, something that's super important but not urgent, something that future you will thank you for. Starting to block out priorities and times in calendars, really, make sure that you get these really important things done. Because the work deadlines, the fire drills, the stuff that other people need from you, of course, that's going to get done because that's built into the rhythms of your day. All right. So, starting with you, understanding what your normal patterns are, understand how you like to work, understand where you like to ad lib and be more free, and where you want to be structured. All right. So the second part of that leadership North Star is projects. Um, so when we talk about like how structure works for you in projects, typically projects is about what is the detailed creator work that you need to get done, whether it's writing code, creating a roadmap, writing a presentation, writing an email, or for me, carving out time to write my next book and do research for that. A lot of structure and spontaneity is around time management. I mentioned earlier, I use my calendar as a to do list because in the past I've had lots of long, long, long to do lists, but they don't get done because there's not enough hours in the day to do them. So, one of the techniques that I use well to actually balance out structure and spontaneity is to create focus blocks, and this is something that we did a lot at Facebook and a lot of other tech companies do, which is it's hard to be creative. It's hard to get in flow when your day is broken out into 30-minute chunks. So instead, make sure that you have 2 or 3 hour chunks of time, focus blocks scattered throughout your week. And use that for the times that are the most that where you're the most naturally creative. For me, it's the mornings, and then sometimes Friday afternoons as well. And block those out in your calendar as focus blocks. So what that is you use the structure, but what you do inside those 2 or 3 hours, there can be a lot more spontaneity in that. There can be the sense of, oh, this is a strategic high level problem I really want to be thinking about, the vision of where my project or company is going to go for the next couple of years. All right. I have some blank space, some white space time, and I get to freestyle, freeform in that. Or it might just be, all right, I'm having a hard time figuring out the narrative structure of this deck. Okay, I have this time, so let me use it. Because I have 2.5 hours, 3 hours, I could also waste some time scouting the internet, looking for other examples of maybe how to create a slide deck. But using focus blocks is a way to create both of that structure and spontaneity. Okay, this is going long, so I'm going to move a little quickly. The next part of that leadership North Star is people. So part of this is about thinking, what are your normal patterns when you interact with people? Is it different when you're managing up versus managing sideways versus managing down? A lot of people I know who are leaders, who are managers, when they're working with their own team, they're much more comfortable. So they can freestyle a meeting, they can have kind of informal like culture check-ins or stand-ups with your team. So that's pretty spontaneous. But then they tend to be really structured when they're managing upwards. Just like you don't want to waste your boss's time. You don't want to waste the CEO's time. So you want a very, very structured agenda. So what I would do is play with that. Be like, well, if you have a very structured agenda, you might get all your points across, but maybe you don't have enough time for like the free form interesting Q&A to let the other person dive into a part and do some co-creation around this meeting. So what I would do is take a look at how you normally interact with people, how you normally run your meetings, and try a little bit of the other side of your normally structured, add a little bit of spontaneity or play with the structure. If you have one-on-one meetings and you always start it asking your employee, hey, how's it going? Give me a status update. Maybe you flip it and have them run it, have them lead the agenda of the meeting. These are the little ways to tweak with how much or how little structure and how much or how little spontaneity you want in your days with people and meetings as leadership tools. And then finally, I think this gets to be really interesting when you think about your leadership in the culture and context of an organization. Think about the groups and organizations you belong to. How structured are they or how spontaneous are they? Is it maybe a slightly more process driven, heavy organization that is structured? If so, is that the culture that you want for your team within it or for your people within it? Is this the culture that you want for adding more creativity and fun and innovation? And if not, what are some little experiments you can try to loosen up the structure and add more spontaneity? Or on the reverse side, perhaps there's a lot of spontaneity. One example, especially for early stage startups where I work with a lot of CEOs and co-founders, there can be a lot of spontaneity with hiring practices. I don't know what I want. I'm not going to take the time to write a job description. When I talk to the person, I'm going to know it when I see it, which is great. And that can be a way to hire fast. But that spontaneity and that lack of structure enters in introduces a lot of biased hiring practices because, especially as early stage seed, pre-seed startups, you just want to hire the people you know, and those are the people in your network, the people who are similar to you, and without adding some structure in the form of, okay, what criteria are we looking for this person? What are our company's values? What do we care about? What do we prioritize for this position? Without that little bit of structure, too much spontaneity leads to unwelcome biases. And then really setting that up in the beginning of your company distorts the culture of the company. All right, I've gone through a lot. So, just to recap, we used this framework of the Leadership North Star, and we used it to really talk about how to use culture, structure, and spontaneity as a leadership tool. Starting with what are you? How does structure and spontaneity work for you in different contexts of your life? And then expanding to how to do it with the projects that you create, with time management and prioritization, how to play with structure and spontaneity with people, and then within the greater cultural context of your org or community. That's it for today. I will see you next week. Bye.